we're going to talk about the absolute best boons in the game, Hades by Supergiant Games. This list definitely has speedrunning in mind, but I think that on the whole they should be fairly universal. I've chosen my top 5 picks, and we'll talk about why I picked them. I also threw in a few honorable mentions near the end. I love a good fucking honorable mention. Now let's get into them so you can start flaming me in the comments already. At number 5 we have what I would call is the best call in the game, Zeus's Aid. I don't think it is a stretch to say that Zeus's boons are some of the best, and Zeus's Aid is the cream of the crop. The creme de la creme. The call that makes you cream. This boon does some pretty crazy damage with a base 50 even at common, and it takes palm upgrades very well. Like many calls, you don't have to aim it, it will auto-target anything you are close to, and the power of this boon is even further amplified by supplementary boons like Double Strike, Jolted, and Splitting Bolt. The true blessed combo, of course, is Smoldering Air, which if you don't know, makes your call gauge charge automatically, but caps at that first 25% tick. Since Zeus is a prerequisite for this duo boon, it just couldn't be any easier to dish out a crazy amount of damage. It is able to carry many runs to some great clear times. Smoldering Air almost took this spot on the list, but since it needs Zeus's Aid to be at its most effective, I felt like the call itself deserved recognition. Some other calls like Dionysus's Aid and Artemis's Aid are okay, but Zeus's Aid is more consistent and does damage faster. Other calls either don't do any damage or are too slow, and if your purpose is going fast, then Zeus's Aid takes the cake. Do you remember what it's like to have only one dash? Me either. That's because dashes are incredibly powerful in Hades. Not only can you move through arenas more easily and quickly, but you also gain very important invulnerability frames, and on most weapons, dash strikes are typically more effective than regular attacks. Although I admit I will often roll over simple +1 dashes, taking +2 or +3 dashes feels very powerful. If you've never zoomed around a room doing dash strike chains on Stygius, you're really missing out. Combined with a decent dash boon, you can make short work of most rooms, and even hunt down stray enemies with ease. Hermes can be a bit of a dick when offering the boons that you want. God's Pride can be helpful when it comes to boon rarity, but there's plenty of evidence to show that that's a sham. Hermes definitely eats most of my Fated Persuasion rerolls. Also, I highly recommend giving dash-only runs a go. It's another excellent place to have extra dashes and a fun challenge. This is a boon that can pretty universally improve just about any build, so I think it definitely deserves the number 4 spot. Speaking of dashes, do you like annihilating enemies without even having to attack? Then Tidal Dash is the boon for you! Coming in at number 3, it deals an insane amount of damage, not just from its initial base damage, which is fairly high and scales well with palms, but also because Poseidon's inherent knockback effects deal extra damage when enemies are pushed into walls. And combined with the excellent boon Breaking Wave, which deals an extra burst of damage when enemies are slammed into walls, you'll be playing pinball with your enemies as they explode on impact. Tidal Dash is at its most effective in small rooms and on weapons that either have decent range like the rail and spear, or have high burst damage like many cast builds. It can still be effective on other weapons like the sword. People have been experimenting with some privilege status shenanigans. It just might not be the most optimal. There is a reason though that Achilles and Eris are considered two of the best and fastest weapons, and both rely heavily on the power of Tidal Dash. At number 2 we have the duo boon Merciful End. Ares and Athena truly blessed us when they came down from atop Olympus and gifted us this powerhouse of a duo boon. Doom does decent damage on its own, but once you can proc the damage immediately, it becomes an entirely different beast. In fact, the main reason this doesn't take the number 1 spot is because it is difficult to assemble this build. To be at its maximum potential, you first need Ares and Athena on your attack and special, which one specifically depends on the weapon. Then you also want Athena's dash boon, and getting Impending Doom from Ares, Greatest Reflex from Hermes, and Pressure Points, or the duo boon Deadly Reversal really push it to its limits. Merciful End is a go-to speedrunning strategy on many weapons. It is often best on the fist aspects like Demeter, but also works well on a spear like Guan Yu, swords like Nemesis, and even shields like Zeus. Once you've got the build assembled though, you can watch the health bars of large enemies and bosses quickly disappear, and on top of the large damage, since Athena's deflect boons are a core part of the build, it is also extremely safe. The combined might of these deities of war rightfully deserves this spot as the second best boon in Hades. Before we get to our number 1 spot, I want to make a few honorable mentions that were close to making the list, but didn't quite cut it. I didn't include Hades Aid because... is it a boon? Like, technically it is, although it comes from a keepsake. I really like Hades Aid. It's probably my favorite, mostly because it lets you manipulate the dad fight. When you use Hades Aid, enemies will repeat their last move, so this can help you prevent dad from going invisible in phase 1 of the fight, and 100% global damage is no slouch. Divine Dash is undoubtedly a good boon. I think it shines best for newer players as extra safety, and then begins to fall off as you get better at the game, until you get to high heat, and then it becomes pretty good again. I wanted to find a place for Artemis in the top 5, but I couldn't seem to do it. Crit is very good in Hades, but to really perform well, it has to be carried by a particular concoction of attack and special bonuses like Hades Call, Chaos Boons, Hunter's Dash, etc. It takes a lot to reach its max potential. Pressure points is a bonus to any build, it's just free damage. Bottom line is that crit is good, but maybe not top 5 good. Splitting Bolt is the pinnacle of Zeus boons. I think we already made the point that Zeus is a strong god to have in your pool, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Splitting Bolt can potentially double your damage output. The only reason I put Zeus' 8 above this is because it can do meaningful damage without Splitting Bolt and has good synergies with other boons. Here we are at the number 1 boon in the game. I'm sure at this point you've been yelling at me about this one, but that's because it's number 1. Now, this is not a solo boon. The piece à la resistance is Hypersprint plus Rush Delivery. For those that don't know, Rush Delivery adds global percentage damage based on bonus movement speed. Hypersprint gives 100% movement speed after dashing for a few seconds. And you know a bitch loves to dash. The dream, of course, is always to get epic Rush Delivery alongside Hypersprint for 100% bonus damage. That's double damage. Double it. Double global damage. Even the 50% from Common Rush Delivery is no small damage increase. This is why the community has coined the combination Hyper Delivery. It is really these two boons together that makes this strong, but Rush Delivery is where the damage comes from, which is why it gets the number 1 spot. You can get a small bonus damage as well if you get Greater Haste instead of Hyper Sprint, but it's nowhere near as strong. The crux, of course, is that getting the stingy Hermes to offer the right boons is not easy. You have to take Hyper Sprint first to unlock Rush Delivery as a tier 2 boon, but even with Fated Persuasion rolls, it is very tough to get Hermes to show both, when he has all those other shitty boons to pawn off on you. But when it comes together, oh boy does it feel wonderful.
Megara. I have to help him, Lord.
You're surely needed elsewhere, Megara. Why don't you clean your chamber so ferociously?
My chambers just aren't as enjoyable to fight.
You and your clever wit. Got you. Enough. Behold. Escape.
That wraps up our top 5 boons, plus a few bonuses. Maybe I missed a boon you think is great, and you're going, UVA, you dumb, ugly blackguard, what are you on about? And I'll remind you that this is just my opinion, and I'm only a B-tier speedrunner at best, so I'm probably wrong about something. Regardless, if you want more of my bad opinions or content to fill your time, consider subscribing. Disliking and causing shit in the comments also helps me a lot. Sometimes I'm live on Twitch, and we even have a Discord now. Links to things are down below in Pandora's box. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the House of Hades.